Okay, hi everybody. It is 11 on the dot. Welcome to the Interplanetary Summer Transmission webinar. My name is Jessica Rousset. Next slide, please. I am the Deputy Director at ASU's Interplanetary Initiative. I'd like to welcome you all today to this webinar on behalf of our entire team at Interplanetary and our Vice President, Lindy Elkins-Tanton, who sadly isn't able to join us today, but I know she's with us in spirit and will be watching later. So again, welcome all today. And before we get started, next slide, just some housekeeping items here. So this is a webinar format. While we can't see or hear you, please use the chat. I see that folks are already sharing with us where they're tuning in from, which is awesome. So please let us know where you're joining from, and then feel free to use the chat throughout our session today to provide your comments and questions, and we'll address all of them at the end. If you are signed up for the Sun Devils Reward Program, then your attendance today will earn you pitchforks. If you don't know about that, check it out. You can earn some ASU swag through this program. And then the last point I want to make before we get into the webinar is that we are recording it. You'll get a copy of the recording, a link, but we're also going to ask for your feedback, which we do every time, but in particular this time around. Next slide, please. We are wrapping up our fiscal year, academic year here at ASU, and so this is always a good time to reflect on what we're doing and how we're doing it. And so for those of you who have tuned in the past, we do these webinars quarterly in order to cover all the different things that we do at Interplanetary and to give good information that's actionable and that gives you all opportunities to engage with us. Because everything that we do here is, we have an incredible staff, but it is all about collaboration across the university and beyond. So the question to you all, if you wouldn't mind, is giving us feedback on the format, on the frequency, on the content, anything you'd like to share and to inform us going forward for next year. We will definitely take that into consideration as we plan ahead. So thank you in advance for that. Next slide. Again, welcome. So we're wrapping up our year here at ASU. And so we've really had a great, very productive year. We're going to be capturing all of this in our year in review, which is going to publish mid-July. So I would encourage you all to sign up for our newsletter. That's the best way to get that report right in your inbox. And I'm going to give you today a little bit of an overview of all the different programs that we have at Interplanetary and how this particular webinar sort of focuses on programs, sort of how it fits in the context of all the things that we do. And what we're going to be talking about today, of course, is our pilot projects that are launched using a specific methodology that we call the Big Questions Teaming Method. And then importantly, you're going to hear from all of our team leads today who will give you some quick pitches about the projects that they've led this year, the achievements that they've made, and really exciting progress across the entire portfolio, and then what to expect next year. Next slide. Excellent. So what we do here at Interplanetary is using this sort of animating big question of how we might build a positive human space future for all to really rethink how we can accelerate research, make education and workforce development more impactful, and ultimately improve society and advance society for the better. We do this in 3 different ways. So we have our innovation and research programs, our learning and education programs, and our collaboration and engagement programs. The webinar today is going to focus in sort of that research and innovation space, specifically our Big Questions teaming methodology and our pilot projects. But we have other programs in this bucket. Specifically, we have a laboratory here on campus that focuses on space hardware. We talk about projects happening in the lab at some of our other quarterly webinars. We also have an annual fellowship, and we're welcoming our 2nd fellow, which we're going to be announcing in our upcoming June newsletter. So sign up for that. We're very excited to announce our new fellow and their project. And this time around, we're partnering with our School of Philosophical, Historical, and Religious Studies at ASU. So stay tuned for that. Moving into our learning and education program, just to give you a little update for the year. We just wrapped up our third year offering the technological leadership major and a new minor. And so we're very excited about the growth of this degree program. We're launching a brand new certificate in the fall called the SciTech Space Leadership Certificate. It's going to be online, self-paced, fully asynchronous, and it's developed for scientists, technologists, and engineers that are in their careers, so in the workforce, whether it's in commercial, academia, or government, and that are finding themselves on sort of a leadership path where they are given greater responsibilities overseeing small, medium, large projects, but don't necessarily have the formal training around some of those more sort of durable skills of team building, communication, leadership, project management, and budgeting. So this certificate is meant to give those folks actionable skills, and we have contextualized it with interviews from leading voices in the space sector. So we're very excited to launch that in the fall. So keep an eye out for that. And lastly, in our learning program bucket, we have Open Citizen, which is a community-focused informal learning program that we're really scaling this year. We're going to be partnering with over a dozen middle and high schools here in the Arizona region. And the students that are going to be participating in all of these pilot projects will have an opportunity to earn course credit at ASU. So this is a program that's really scaling up this year. So you're going to hear more about that. And we're very excited for this to move forward. And we're, of course, working closely with the learning enterprise here at ASU to make this a reality. And lastly, in our collaboration and engagement bucket, as I shared earlier, Interplanetary cannot do all the things that we do without collaboration, and that starts across the entire university. We've seen this year the number of units, centers, schools, institutes with space programs grow, which is extremely exciting. We have a very multifaceted and comprehensive approach to thinking and advancing questions around space across the entire university. We partnered with a number of units this year to host our very first Arizona Space Summit. That's taking, and inviting stakeholders across the state in government, industry, and academia to come and think about how we can continue to grow the space economy here across Arizona. And we're going to be looking to do that again. We also hosted a space career fair for the first time, which was very, very well attended, both by space companies and students. We continue to collaborate with Blue Origin and Sierra Space on the University Advisory Council, along with our 14 other University Council members. We also cover some of that work in other webinars, so stay tuned for those updates. And then lastly, every year we invite thought leaders across sectors, across disciplines to spend several days with us here in Phoenix to do a big questions teaming workshop. And so this year, in January, we went through this exercise, and as a result, we had several exciting projects emerge, several of which are part of our newly funded projects this year, which you're going to hear about in a moment. Next slide, please. So for those that aren't familiar, our big questions teaming method is a very intentional process by which we bring participants together across disciplines and sectors to brainstorm big questions. For us, it's about positive human space futures or some sort of variation on that animating theme. And we have folks select questions, form teams, and establish projects that they might be able to collaborate around to advance answers to those big questions. They typically will come back with a fully fleshed out application, and then based on those applications, we decide which we're going to fund on a year-to-year basis. We funded 9 projects this year. We're going to hear about them today. And we're funding 6 new projects next year. So 13 total for next year, including the renewals. So we're very excited to see this program growing. And then ultimately, of course, these projects are meant to continue on beyond the support, the seed support from our initiative through external sponsors and collaborators, ultimately making that societal impact that we're looking for in whichever way really makes sense for that particular project. And so far, we're at, about 40 projects that we have funded over the years in this manner. Next slide. One thing that we're really excited about this year, and we've started, is taking this methodology and collaborating with other groups, focusing on big questions that may not be related to space. So we've partnered with different units within ASU and some outside of ASU this past year. And we're looking to formalize how we sort of give and enable other groups to do their own big questions teaming process for their own organization. So if you're curious about this methodology and how it can help drive collaborative, bold, new projects to advance your programs, please get in touch. This year is going to be a big focus on collaborating with other groups to do this. Of course, faculty, if you are interested in joining an upcoming workshop, please reach out. And then many opportunities for students to be engaged in our projects. Students are critical to the success of all the projects you're going to hear about. So if you are a student and you're checking in, listen attentively to all of our projects and see which you might be interested in potentially being considered for. We're also very excited to work this year with ASU's Luminosity Lab. If you aren't familiar with Luminosity, they do incredible work bringing together interdisciplinary undergraduate students to work on very diverse technology-based projects mostly. So several of our new projects are going to be with Luminosity. And then lastly, we're also very glad to be able to offer this year again the opportunity for our ASU online students to join some of these pilot projects and some other interplanetary related projects. Next slide. All right, so I would like to just have you all mark your calendars for August 24th. We are going to be inviting, and stay tuned for announcements on who we're going to be inviting, some big thinkers from a very broad swath of disciplines to come to ASU and give us talks and have a conversation around their work and how their work drives a positive human space future. This is going to be at the Center for Planetary Health, 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. Stay tuned for more details on that. We're just sharing this now so you can mark your calendars accordingly. Next slide. Okay. So these are the projects that you're going to hear from today that we are renewing in terms of support next year. Those that aren't renewed are still continuing on, because that is, of course, the goal is for these projects to keep going. So you'll hear from those as well. But these are the ones that are going to be renewed. And then our new projects, next slide. I probably don't have too much time to go into detail on these, but I wanted to show them to you. There's going to be a write-up on all of these in our year in review by July 1st, which is when they start. There'll be much more information on our website, so be sure to circle back there for more information. But as you can see, we're going to be, bringing together science fiction writers and economists to think about world building and space futures. We're going to be looking at how we can impact and minimize the impact of human activity on climate change by utilizing space resources. We'll be visualizing lunar orbital maps as activity increases in the cislunar space, and more. So 3 of these projects, as you can see here with Mark Naufel tagged, are going to be projects that we're partnering up with Luminosity Lab on. So very excited to see these 6 diverse projects moving forward next year. Next slide. And very quickly, the goal, of course, is for our projects to keep going and keep scaling. Port of Mars is an online video game that simulates an early colony and settlement on Mars. This game is now open to the public. So it's open to, we want to collect data. If you are, if you want to bring this into your classroom or play yourself. Okay, thank you, Taryn. There's the link. The more players, the more data, the more research we can do. So please check that out. And then lastly, we had a project funded a few years ago called CIMIC, which was a simulation of the initial SEAL missions conducted at Biosphere 2. So there's an online version of this, but there's also a physical space now, which is a fully functional Mars habitat that's designed to replicate the conditions of a sealed pressurized environment for researchers to simulate realistic scenarios for a future Mars mission. And this project moved forward with a recent $1.5 million grant to advance that work. So these are the kinds of impacts and sort of outcomes that we're really excited to see with our projects. Now, I will turn it over to, we'll start our presentations. And I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Laura Cechanowicz, who is an assistant professor in arts, media, and engineering and graphic information technology at ASU. Thank you for that. And she's also a designer in the immersive experience or new mix center here at ASU. She's a designer and artist who uses world building to collaboratively build spatialized content focused on science and art, embodiment, identity, health, and technology. Her world building projects have resulted in films, animations, in interactive operas, virtual reality experiences shown at Sundance Film Festival, multimedia collections displayed at the Venice Biennale, and concepts for augmented reality apps and digital multimedia books. This is a very ambitious and super exciting project, and really happy, Laura, to have you lead the charge on this. And so I'll hand things over to you for an update. Thank you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here speaking about our project today and to be working with Interplanetary Initiative. This project is a collaboration with ASU Meteor Studios, which is led by Robert Lee Kamwa, and he and I are co-leading going into this new year. All our first year work was co-led with me and DB Bauer, who is also in AME at ASU, and remains linked to our project. Our project is also a close collaboration with other ASU scientists, especially Catherine Powell, who works with the Perseverance Mastcam Z team. So we rely on Cat a lot to help consult with the science and to help us understand the photogrammetry of Mars, which we use regularly in the project. We also loved working with II, who linked us to a force of interns who are scientists. So if you're an undergrad student and you're interested in interning with our project, we would love to have you. Our interns looked a lot at the history of Mars and human understandings of Mars, and also spoke with scientists and started to gather up all the information that we have about Mars across history into today, and then cohere that into storylines. So let's go to the next slide. So in our project, it's a virtual reality experience that takes place on the Sun Devil Stadium football field. It's very unique because the entire football field is the sphere across which you can walk. You start at one end zone and you can wander across the whole thing and experience a bunch of content in VR. So you traverse the field to learn about human understandings of Mars over time, drawing from art, culture, and science. And then you're transported to a Martian surface via a fully 3D environment created from the most recent photos sent back to Earth by machines currently researching Mars today. So as you can see on this slide, our mission is to help visitors learn about the past, present, and future understandings of Mars, experience the scientific method in action across time and human history, and be able to walk on the Martian surface. So what does it mean to stand on Mars? The way that we do that is first you walk across a star field, which is like walking from Earth to Mars. And as you walk across the star field, you'll find different stars you can interact with. You click on them and you open up scientific information, which is placed on a timeline in this star field. So you can understand the things that humans learned about Mars over time. And then once you reach the end of that, you go into a model of Mars that's in the center of the field and find a portal which will take you and transfer you to the surface of Mars. There you can look around and you can hear Martian dust storms intermittently. You'll find Perseverance, who is also there in real world, taking photos. And we use photogrammetry to stitch all of these images, actual images of Mars, together to create a 3D terrain. So that's how you get into the 3D terrain. When it comes to the scientific method, as you experience those elements across history, you get to see how humans conduct science and how we come up with many different hypotheses, only to see them changed, altered, updated, and proven false over time. So we learn to embrace failure and understand the drama and the joy of conducting science. Next slide. So our accomplishments to date include our in-depth research into the science and the history. We've done a lot of design and prototyping in the beautiful starscape, as well as the Martian landscape, which has taken a lot of work to make the photogrammetry work. We've made these immersive 3D landscapes, conducted several interviews with Mars scientists, always conducting more, and started to develop these stories about Mars. So for example, the story of water on Mars, the human firsts on Mars, and many other storylines. And the next one. So what we're looking forward to in the next year is continuing to develop our technology for the football field, which could be then transferred over to other projects. So we make a system that works so that other projects could use this as something like an SDK and then be able to create their own experiences on a football field, which is a pretty massive technological development. We are continuing to develop our MVP, adding more stories, more interviews, and more of that magic of science. And then we'll have another event at the end of spring next year to show off what we have built so far in the second year. And then the final slide, you can see our large team, which is ever growing, and we love to add people. So just let us know if you want to join. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Laura. I will just say that the Interplanetary team was fortunate to be one of the first to demo this experience on the stadium field. And so if you do all have a chance to attend a future demo this year, be sure to do that. It was very, very exciting to see what they've accomplished today, but also just all the possibilities going forward. So thank you so much, Laura. And now I'd love to welcome Daniel Rothenberg. Daniel, there he is. Hi, Daniel.
Hey, Jessica. Hey, everybody.
So Daniel, I'll just introduce you briefly. Daniel's a professor of practice in the School of Politics and Global Studies at ASU, co-director of the Center on the Future of War, as well as senior fellow at New America, which is a DC-based think tank. He works on human rights, armed conflict, and transitional justice, and has designed and managed rule of law projects in Afghanistan, Iraq, East Africa, and throughout Latin America. And he's written a number of books, and we're very happy to have worked with Daniel this year to advance this project, Preventing Space War, which I think really culminated with some exciting outcomes. And so I won't steal your thunder, Daniel, and I'll let you tell us about the project.
Thanks so much, Jessica. Thanks to the Interplanetary Institute, Karen Struck, and everybody else. I co-direct something called the Center on the Future of War at ASU, which is a partnership between our university and a think tank in DC called New America, and we deal with policy-related issues having to do with armed conflict writ large. And so Preventing Space War project is an engagement with this question about what is armed conflict, what is war in space, with the idea of bringing up big thoughts and questions about how to avoid cataclysmic space war. Space is an interesting area for engagement. When the initial discussions about space and armed conflict were put together, this was at a time when only big states, the United States, the USSR, could engage in space and could put things into space. And the great concern then was avoiding the use of nuclear weapons in space. A lot of the early treaties focus on this. But of course, space has changed radically. Now space is a domain that lots of players are engaged with, companies as well as all sorts of different states and collections of states. And in fact, our lives pass through space. through, all kinds of communications and other information. So let's move on to the next slide. We put together this team of individuals from around the world who have interest and expertise in different aspects of space and security in space. And we made the main focus of this project a forum in Washington, D.C., which convened cross-sector space experts with the idea of an open dialogue about threats in space warfare. And so there are three basic areas of focus: space domain awareness, working towards a common understanding of the domain of space. How can we talk and think about space as regards efforts to avoid armed conflict? Space law of armed conflict. So there is some serious bodies of law, international law, known as international humanitarian law or law of armed conflict, as well as other kinds of international laws. And how do they apply to space? There's in fact a law of space, but it's constructed in a way that doesn't cover a lot of the current issues and concerns, particularly as space has become so democratized. And then deterring in conflict in space, that is to say, what can we do to minimize the chance that space will become a domain of serious armed conflict? It's actually a domain of armed conflict in the sense that so much of communications and other aspects of what war and conflict are pass through space. We see this in Ukraine, and we see this in really everywhere in the world. And then the keynote, this was sort of a big deal. We had the Chief Operations Officer for United States Space Force recently stood up, Lieutenant General Deanna Burt, who gave us the keynote, Securing Space, the view from U.S. Space Force. Obviously, the fact that the United States government has created something called Space Force indicates the significance of space for questions of armed conflict. So next slide. Here's a so we have an organizing team of 30 members and a number of graduate students. We had this big forum on May 17th, and coming out of this is a report on what occurred during this event and some media stories and some white papers and outputs. But the big issue here is, can we at ASU play a role in deepening the interdisciplinary discussion of space as a domain for conflict? And can we do that in a way that brings together players from industry, players from the military, as well as players from the academy? So each of our events at this forum had representatives of each of those aspects of society. And it's really a profound challenge because things are changing so rapidly in space and in the access to space that it's not a domain that's easily controllable. And one of the big questions becomes, how can all of these disparate actors, whether they're corporations or states or members of civil society, how can we work together to create a discourse about space and to do what's possible to prevent space war? It's a big challenge. In fact, in some ways, it's an impossible challenge in that armed conflict is involving space already and will involve space in even more dangerous and troubling ways. That said, we know from some past experiences, whether it's regulating the proliferation of nuclear weapons or chemical weapons, that in fact, there are all sorts of successful ways to minimize the harmful outcomes of conflict. Next slide, I think. So we should be bold in our global collaborations and communications. That makes sense. And we look forward to ongoing, international efforts to discuss ways to develop new languages and also to popularize the discussion of this issue. Interestingly, there's not much talk about preventing space war in the public sphere. There was quite a lot back in the old days of discussions of preventing the use of nuclear weapons in space, but maybe it's because space has become such a complicated, democratized space that a lot is happening, and it's hard for us to focus adequately on these issues. But thanks so much. It's been great working with the Interplanetary Institute, and we look forward to future collaborations.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you so much, Daniel. Yes, this has been a wonderful opportunity, I think, for ASU, and glad to have I catalyze, a greater presence in sort of this discourse. We gladly also hosted this at the ASU DC facility, which is lovely. If anyone's not been there, it's a lovely spot, and we're very much looking forward to move this project forward, but with a focus on collaboration. So we're very much looking for organizations to help host a workshop next year, to be focused less on information sort of sharing and more on actionable deliverables around a consensus on acceptable norms of behavior, and looking at how we can get those norms adopted very broadly on an international basis. So excited to share where this project goes as it evolves. All right, so I would like to move on to our next speaker. Thank you so much. Chris Bryan, welcome. Chris is an assistant professor in the School of Computing and Augmented Intelligence here at ASU in our Fulton Schools of Engineering. He leads the Sonoran Visualization Laboratory, which researches data visualization, human-computer interaction, augmented virtual reality, and data science. And in particular, his group develops novel designs, algorithms, statistical models, and techniques to support analysis and decision-making, particularly for complex data. And for this project, the complex data is visualizing in real time, over the globe, the different types of activities that are happening related to space. That can be used for many different reasons. And so I'll hand it over to Chris, who's been leading this and I think made some really nice progress with bringing this to life. So thanks for being here, Chris.
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, so with this project, kind of the driving question was, what is the state of space activities globally? So, around the world, what types of activities pertain to space? What does investment in space-related activities look like across various countries, or maybe agencies or industries, businesses? What types of projects are being pursued? What type of research is being pursued? So we were interested in kind of, is there a way we can take all this data, which is all over the internet, lots of different places? Can we kind of collect that data and organize it and put it in one space, so we can kind of see, what is the state of space activity? Next slide. Our idea was to develop an online, so a web-based, what we call a heat map. So kind of a dashboard that visualizes space-related activities occurring around the world. So, what's occurring in the US, what's occurring in other countries. And to collect data about these activities, we wanted to scrape it from just various news and media sources online. So like, say, NASA or the European Space Agency, or like news agencies. And the idea was, if we can visualize this, we can kind of communicate, it's an easy way to see what is actually going on. It's very dynamic, or an interactive way. So we can let people kind of explore, what are the activities that are occurring. And we can kind of, as the slide there says, you can think about ways to frame, what are the benefits of space-related activities based on their, the drivers, the end goals that are being pursued. And so really this was a way to, you could think about engaging stakeholders. We give them this information, and we can use it as a way to shape, future projects or goals or pursuits. And so several of our external stakeholders, team members on this project, came from industries like SpaceX that are interested in, future projects. So, for people who want to see this sort of data, this type of heat map could be very useful. Next slide, please. So there was quite a big data lift on this project. So we, one of the main things that the funding for this project provided is we hired 2 undergraduate students, two computer science students here, a sophomore and a junior. So quite young students, but they did a really good job on this project. And they implemented several web scrapers. Currently, we're supporting 9 space-related news sources, so like NASA, the European Space Agency. And these scrapers pull space-related news articles, publications, press clippings. They do a lot of data analysis, some natural language processing, extracting keywords, locational things, different bits of metadata from the articles. We're storing all that data on an Amazon ECS instance. So currently we have about 1,800 articles, but the scrapers run every day. So there's new articles that are being added daily. So this is quite a significant data haul. So that was one side. The other side is we're currently working on implementing a web-based dashboard that actually visualizes the data that's being stored. So it's currently live on spaceheatmap.com. If you go to the next slide, we have a screenshot of it. And right, so right now it's still the very initial version of the dashboard, but you can see that you can search by locations, keywords, dates. The keyword search has a bug in it. We're trying to fix it right now. But when you do a search, we pull articles that we've scraped and kind of generated like the location data, all the other metadata for. And it displays it on this heat map. So you can see that each of the heat map layers there indicate space-related activity that we've kind of generated. Oh, this is based on keywords in the article, or maybe if it talks about, say, some project from some university, right? We kind of analyze and figure out where is that space activity occurring, Washington, DC, or Houston, or so forth. So we display it geographically on the map, and you can click on little markers, which would indicate, an individual article, an individual activity that occurs. We kind of give you some kind of summary information about the article that we've generated, and you can also link to the original articles. So again, this is live. We're planning to keep updating it. We've had some really good discussions recently with our external stakeholders with new features that they want to have added that we should be getting to work on this fall and in the phase 2 renewal. Yeah, very cool project. And happy if anyone wants to go give us feedback, always welcome to do that. You just go hit it and play with it. Next slide, please. Yeah, so kind of some of the content functionality. We're currently collecting feedback from our stakeholders and some other testing that we're doing to figure out what new functionality we want to add. There's some more advanced search features that we're hoping to add. We're looking at adding new sources in phase 2, so maybe social media, more real-time types of artifacts. One thing that we're also interested to look at is scraping in other languages, right? So some of these space agencies, like the Japanese Space Agency, or in India, for example, right? They post articles not in English, so that has its own complexities and challenges that we're interested to see if we can figure out next year. Another thing that we're looking into is looking at activities over time. So can we show kind of, not just by geography, and a date range, but can we show how some keyword evolves over time, or maybe some category of space agency. So we've got some ideas that we're hoping to get to work on as we start phase 2. So really excited about some of the future work we're going to do on this. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we have a really good team on this. Mohammed and Rohan are the 2 undergraduates here. They've done I really just want to commend them. They've done a great job on the work. And then we've got a lot of external stakeholders who provided some really nice feedback about ways we can kind of operationalize this data, this dashboard, and some more ideas for kind of expanding its reach and its capabilities. So Jessica, thank you for letting me present, and I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Chris. And we do have some of the team members actually, I think, tuning in today. I see Rashani and Terry. And certainly, Chris, is it okay for folks to reach out to you if they're playing around with the heat map and have some thoughts and feedback for you that are?
Oh, absolutely. So there's always a risk, right? Anytime it's like a version 1.0 of software, it's going to you're going to play with it and find some bugs, but that's actually really good for us. So, happy to collect feedback on what you like, what you don't like. I mentioned like our keyword search has a bit of a bug in it right now, but hopefully that'll get fixed, in a week or 2.
Yeah. Well, I think now progress will, happen fast once there's a thing for people to react to and kick the tires on. So thank you, Chris, for getting the project to this point. And I echo your praise for your students. They did an incredible job. Thanks, Chris. So next I'd like to introduce Yajur Sood. He is on the Earth Operations Center project, which is actually a project that Interplanetary has supported for a number of years and is now ready to sort of move on beyond our support. So we're excited to see where this project goes. A little bit about Yajur: he's a graduate student. He's majoring in human-computer interaction at our Fulton Schools of Engineering, and he works as a creative XR developer on this project and is affiliated with Meteor Studios, which you've heard about previously. Students from Meteor Studios are working on a number of our projects. So Yajur, welcome. Thank you so much for presenting on behalf of your team today, and excited to hear your updates.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. So we at Earth Operations Center are trying to build a collaborative space for the display and analysis of climate data. And we think that a VR space for that would be a good way to visualize the data, because we'll be able to see a 3D globe and on top of it, the data that as it should be displayed. So our efforts are towards building a VR space where different researchers and different people in the same area can collaborate and meet each other and work on the data. Next slide, please. So yeah, it's a VR experience and a meeting space and collaborating, note-taking, applying different data on the globe itself, and creating different visualizations to study the data on or study the impact of climate change and study climate itself. We have created some architectural designs and some visualizations that you'll see on the next slide. And there we have some STEM-oriented programs and partnerships with different research groups. And we work on them, we collaborate with each other to make the best of what we have with our resources and to develop this project further. Next slide, please. These are some snapshots from our project. We have created this in Unity, and we are currently working on improving it and developing it even further. On the left is a video, which if you can play and just skip through, just to show what the VR space looks like. So once you're in the VR headset, this is how you traverse through the architecture, and there will be some tutorial explaining you how the controls work and a visualization of data, of snapshots, of the collaborative space, etc. You can pause the video, it's fine. Thank you. And on the right of the video is just the Earth itself as the focus. So once you are in the space where you just want to see the data and just want to visualize how different types of data, different types of climate affect the Earth, and you don't want any other distractions, there you have just a globe and you can apply different data on top of it from different websites. So our primary focus of getting the data is the NOAA, which is a very trusted source of data, and we are already in collaboration with them, and we have gotten a lot of help from them. So it makes sense for us to collaborate with them and get data from their servers and their website into our project. And on the rightmost is the full architectural visualization of how we want the center to finally look like for people to collaborate on it. Next slide, please. So what's next? Since we are graduating from Interplanetary Initiative, and first of all, a huge thank you to them, and we really appreciate the help that we have gotten from them. And we are trying to move this project further along, iterate on it, improve it, and make the best out of the help that we got from them, and also from other researchers, other collaborations, other projects. We'll be presenting a prototype of our project in Washington, DC in July. And there will always be continuous collaboration with NOAA or virtual simulations. We have already shared our project. We had a meeting with some NOAA members, and they saw our project, and we had some helpful discussion of how we can move our project further with their help. And we are trying to integrate our project with the NSF and help improve our study of the climate, and in turn possibly help affect the discussion on climate future and the climate data and climate change. Next slide, please. So this is our team, and Jake is our lead. So if you want any further information about the project, or you want to be a part of it, or you want to collaborate, you can always reach out to Jake or Matt. You have the email for both of them there. So you can reach out to either of them, or you can reach out to any member in the team in case you want more information. Once again, I would just like to stress a gratitude to Interplanetary Initiative for their help to our project. And we hope to collaborate not only with them, but with any other team in the space, with ASU, with NOAA, with NSF, to make this project more and more immersive, more and more better, for a lack of word. And yeah, just continuously improve the project so that we can finally achieve the goal that we set out to reach. Thank you.
Thank you, Yajur. And we are excited to keep track of your progress, as all projects that continue on after, we've sort of completed our financial support. We're always very interested in continuing to help as needed, but also really sort of track your progress, just like Port of Mars and CIMMYC, as I shared earlier. So best of luck to you, Yajur, on the project, and we'll continue to stay in touch. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on and introduce Anne Kapusta with our JEDI Space project. Anne's been a great collaborator across many programs at Interplanetary. She's the co-founder and managing director of Think Space Consulting, which supports cutting-edge mission in space and organizations with a mission to do good here on Earth. She focuses on DEI efforts, diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in the industry, and accessibility and disability inclusion in space exploration specifically. She using space as a vital resource to fight climate change, starting with wildfire crisis. And you'll see she's also involved with another project that's more related to sort of that activity. Prior to full-time entrepreneurship, she led R&D, internal R&D and external innovation strategy for a digital and emerging technology think tank, and spent over a decade in the aerospace industry on projects ranging from satellite technology, space weather research, and human space flight. So Anne is multi-talented and therefore engaged in a number of our projects. And so I'll hand it over to you, Anne, to talk to us about JEDI Space. And thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica. So next slide. So JEDI is all about the diversity, equity, and inclusion aspect of my bio, but really looking at how do we establish a framework and a groundwork for building a JEDI space future, where JEDI stands for just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive. Next slide. So our mission and goal with this project, we set out to really, answer this question from the ground up instead of top down. So to do that, we wanted to establish a global community of practice. So we wanted to get the global perspective of what an equitable, just, and inclusive space future looks like, and to define what these key principles and policies would be for this JEDI future. Through our work, we engaged a community of 112 international community members and collected nearly 100 responses from the international audience with perspectives on 4 key areas that we wanted to explore, kind of in building this foundation and framework for a JEDI space. So that was the basic definition of what justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion means, what the purpose of space should be. So how is it being used today, and how do we define our priorities for the utilization of space in the future? What are biases and opportunities that are faced by people in the space sector? And then how do we understand and overcome those barriers as we move forward and expand, kind of our space future? And then the future promise of space. So space has always kind of been idealized as a uniting force for all of humanity, and a way for us to, kind of work together outside of the bounds of country lines here on Earth. So what does a future look like with that if we kind of build that future promise into it? And then how do we work to achieve that? Next slide. So the project status is we collected a lot of data. We did a lot of data analysis on that. We also really wanted to leverage the wonderful team that we had, which included a lot of external industry participants who were really interested in championing a JEDI space, including Dr. Cyan Proctor, who was on the Inspiration 4 mission. This is really her and Loretta Whitesides, who's the head of SpaceKind Foundation. This was really kind of their genesis, their project. And so we wanted to get input from those who are really kind of champions in this space. So we held a recorded discussion on the impact of space for social good with, some key players in the industry. Originally, we were going to produce these results into a traditional white paper, and we decided that, from this kind of community building aspect, our goal for the JEDI project would be to create a digital toolkit, resource, and white paper with all the data accessible to folks to go out and use this data to build their own JEDI space. So we are in the process of wrapping it up. It should be done in the next couple of days. I was really hoping to announce that it was done today, but we will have all that data and information and ability to continue to join the community and be part of the discussion coming to jedispace.org. Next slide. So what's next? So JEDI Space is continuing in fiscal year 24 with Interplanetary, but it's evolving. So really we want to understand how we take these insights and turn them into action for establishing this JEDI space future, or an inclusive, diverse, equitable, and accessible environment in the space industry. So we're evolving into basically a DEIA service model offering. So how do we take the research that was founded along with collaboration with some other great work that's being done at ASU, including the ASU Women in STEM project and the work on the Orbital Reef University Advisory Council, to pull all of these insights together into a toolkit and an action-oriented offering for the industry. So that's really what we're going to focus on. And then we're also going to use the same principles that worked for JEDI in collecting research and insights from the ground up, using that to understand where we're at with space education. So JEDI really focused on the space industry, but we know that getting into the space industry itself is a barrier. So we want to understand how we create that connection with early and advanced education to make sure that we remove those same biases and obstacles as we're evolving the space industry. So that's how we're evolving JEDI for next year. Next slide. And we've had a great team. As I said, we've got a really wonderful team of industry experts on this, and then some really powerhouse ASU students who have helped kind of pull all this data and research together. And similarly to what others have said, if anybody's interested in getting involved with next year's project, please feel free to reach out. Or if you want, more information on how to be part of the JEDI community, reach out on that as well. Thanks very much.
Amazing. Thank you, Anne. Thank you for also being succinct. I'm just realizing that we have so much to share with you all and not enough time. So I'm excited to move into introducing Mary Jane Rubenstein and the Sacred Space Religion and Cosmic Exploration Project. MJ is the author of Astrotopia, the Dangerous Religion of the Corporate Space Race, as well as numerous other books on the intersections of science, philosophy, and religion. Her book, Worlds Without End, The Many Lives of the Multiverse, won the 2022 Iris Award for Outstanding Work at the Intersection of Science, Religion, and Technology. She teaches religion and science in society at Wesleyan University, where she's also affiliated with philosophy and feminist gender and sexuality studies. It's been great to have you be part of this project, MJ, and thanks for sticking around till the end. And we do have 2 more presentations, so everyone that's online hopefully can stick around for a few minutes longer to hear all the great work that's being done. Over to you, MJ. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am utterly delighted to tell you about a project that I've been working on with Lance Goravi called Sacred Space, Religion and Cosmic Exploration. Next slide, please. Okay, so our inaugural big question was actually, what does religion have to do with space exploration? And at first, the answer to this question might seem to be absolutely nothing. Religion is old, space is new, religion is subjective, space is objective, religion is based in faith, space is based in science. I know it sounds weird to talk about these things together. But when you consider that the Apollo 8 astronauts recited Genesis while they orbited the moon, that Buzz Aldrin consumed the Eucharist on the moon, that Inuit ancestors live on the moon, that Buddhist temples are currently being constructed in low Earth orbit, that billionaires are promising human salvation on Mars, that we still name our missions, and the word missions is a theological term, after Greek gods and goddesses, and that every US politician from JFK to Donald Trump and Joe Biden has proclaimed outer space to be America's manifest destiny, it suddenly seems that religion has everything to do with space exploration. So the question becomes, what do we do with this everything? Just as we ask what kind of economic systems and political philosophies and artistic practices we might learn from and which we might leave behind as we imagine possible space futures, how can we learn from religion? So this becomes the question, how do we stimulate thought and discussion on the intersections of religion and space exploration? Next slide, please. So we went about answering this question by doing it, that is to say, by stimulating thought and discussion on the intersections of religion and space exploration. We held a series of springtime webinars in which we asked guests from the space sector, religious studies, and religious traditions 4 major questions, one webinar dedicated to each question. Here they are. 1, how has religion shaped space exploration? 2, how will space exploration reshape religion? 3, how do our religious traditions teach us to conduct ourselves in space? And finally, what is the cosmic future of humanity? And we like to say ask this question with very important sounding voices. What is the cosmic future of humanity? Next slide, please. Our process looked like this. You can see our stages here. And then as you'll see at the end, we did the thing. Highlights from the thing included Roger Launius, former chief historian at NASA, talking about the myth of America as God's new Israel and the way that that's taken up into outer space. Highlights included Rabbi Danya Rothenberg saying that we've done a terrible job of refraining from exploiting one another on Earth, and that care would have to be the basis of any ethic on or beyond this planet. Or Muslim feminist scholar Zahra Ayubi citing Quranic imperatives to maintain a relationship with the Earth and peace with other beings, and the sustainability and integrity of the space environment. Or Ojibwe scholar Deandra Smiles reminding us that the Ojibwe people come down from the stars, which means that the cosmos itself is kin, not an extractive zone or space to be claimed. Or Buddhist ethicist Daniel Kapper offering an ethical compromise when it comes to space mining and saying, do it if it helps eliminate suffering, and don't do it if it intensifies suffering. There was the Vatican Observatory Director Guy Consolmagno, who read a poem that made us all cry, and ufologist Jeff Kripal saying that our warmongering science fiction prepares us terribly to engage inhabitants of other planets who've clearly been beaming down to us since the prophet Ezekiel saw a wheel way up in the middle of the air. Last slide, please. With the renewed funding that we've received for next year, thank you so much. We're hoping to create snackable videos to distill some of these big insights from the longer recordings. We'll also approach our guests and an expanded set of colleagues to write short, chatty essays, perhaps in response to a set of smaller, big questions. Questions like, what is cosmism? Or how would a Tibetan Buddhist tell us to treat Malapert Massif? Or when is the Sabbath on Mars? Or like, where is Mecca if you're in the space station? For giving us the space and the time and the funding to start asking these questions. We're so grateful to the Interplanetary Initiative and its ongoing projects. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, MJ. And I will share that going back to my save the date announcement earlier for August 24th, where we're going to have various big thinkers come and talk to us about space. MJ will be one of those speakers. So and many more exciting people to join her on stage. But thanks, MJ, for joining today and for coming on the 24th. We'll see you then, 24th of August. And I know we're going to lose people because now we're a minute shy of 11 a.m. I do hope that folks can stick around for a few more minutes for us to hear about two very exciting projects. So I'm going to quickly introduce Eric Stribling, who is an assistant teaching professor here at the Interplanetary Initiative. He also taught mechanical engineering in Cameroon at a medical university. And his research focuses on how engineering and technology intersect with society, with an emphasis on space technologies in developing countries. He is traveling in a hotel, so he's he's on his phone. Hopefully we can hear you clearly, Eric, and over to you. Thank you so much for sharing your updates.
Hi, thank you so much. Like Jessica said, my name is Eric Stribling, and this is our research project. Our large question that motivates this project has been, how does space exploration and the development of these new space technologies and industries, how does that impact progress towards the global good as encapsulated by the UN SDGs? So in our first year, we really spent time, sorry, next slide. In our first year, we spent time really digging out into the literature surrounding different space technologies and how they would intersect with the SDGs. The goal of this is to actually have, it's a very difficult problem how technologies end up impacting societies, but we are hoping to inform that process by digging into the space industry's CSR practices at an early stage of the development of this industry. So for our first year, please go next slide. We've sort of developed out a framework where we've taken each SDG individually and targeted a list of different space technologies and their associated industries to build out a map of where certain technologies really have an impact on certain social problems. And I've highlighted one in yellow because I'm going to come back and talk about that particular spot in just a second. Next slide. So over the past year, we've partnered with Leonardo to come up with a VR exhibit that looks into this same question from the points of view of artists. We've also presented our first year's work at the IEEE International Symposium on Technology and Society in 2022, and we are currently working on a qualitative coding of hundreds of documents from the space industry on CSR or ESG practices, and also newspaper articles of outsiders talking about the CSR practices of these same companies. So next slide. To talk about what one of those little nodes on our framework looks like, I'd like to highlight one of our undergraduate students who's now becoming a graduate student. She took one of these intersections and ran with it. So one of the biggest findings from our study is that actually when you look at a lot of the articles written on how space might benefit us, SDG 5, which is gender inclusion, has a poverty of work compared to all other SDGs. So, and that is essentially women in space. So Malaika took that question and developed her own individual research project looking at the Apollo mission, which you see are 3 white men going to space, and the more recent Artemis mission. Both of these deal with human space flight technologies, but she's looking at the changes of those technologies between these 2 missions to look at design choices in the engineering process that changed to be more inclusive, with the hope that this informs inclusive engineering going forward. And this was a paper accepted at the annual conference for the Society of Social Studies of Science. So we're really looking forward to that. Last slide. So going forward, we have 2 goals for this next year. The first one is to finalize and validate the CSR framework that we are developing, and hopefully comparing that with our larger literature review. And then we're also launching a YouTube series called Space for Humans that digs into that framework and brings out little snippets that highlight how space technologies are having either a positive or a negative potential impact on our global society. So that is our project. We've had a wonderful series of advisors and student team members, and I would just like to thank everyone for their hard work on this project.
Thank you so much, Eric. Excited to see this work continue on this year. And I've just, again, we have a number of folks that are still with us, so that's fantastic to hear our final presentation on a very exciting project with lots of great engagement opportunity in this upcoming year. Back over to Anne, who I don't need to introduce again.
Hey everyone, me again. So SpaceHACK for Sustainability is the next project that I helped with, and worked very closely with Eric on this, because this was an evolution from the SESD project from the prior fiscal year 22. So this was kind of a spin out project from that. So SpaceHACK really looked at the big question of how do we involve students in leveraging space technology in achieving the UN SDGs. So as Eric talked about, they kind of did an analysis and saw that there was a lot of overlap between the SDGs and some space technology. And this was a way of trying to engage more students in this conversation, and particularly around how to use Earth observation satellite data to address and solve some of the societal challenges based on the UN SDGs. Next slide. So we took kind of a standard hackathon model and turned it on its head. And took a multidisciplinary cross-sector approach to this. So standard hackathons are usually very computer science, technology driven. You put students in a room with computers, give them a challenge, give them 24 hours to work around the clock and see what they come up with. We really wanted to kind of use that model with space technology, but evolve it to make sure that we were taking a holistic approach to engage more interdisciplinary teams of students by bridging the gap between space technology and societal impact. So we really wanted to, kind of market it and address this in a way that we were looking at the problems first and the societal impacts that could be addressed, and that the technology and tool of space was kind of secondary to that, and that students didn't need to come in with any sort of experience in computer science or data analytics or space technology. They just had to come in caring about some major issues here on Earth. We also brought together, so because of that, because we marketed this as open to everybody and multidisciplinary students, we wanted students to receive world-class training on the tools and technology, and even on the problems themselves, so that they could come in at any level and really find success in this. So we spent a lot of time curating the content and setting the students up for success with university education and industry expertise. And then finally, kind of the three major kind of differentiators for this was finding real world issues and partners that went with it. So we wanted to make sure that we were rooted in reality, so that the problems that we were presenting to the students were really something that they could feel a sense of purpose that they worked on it. So we made sure that we found opportunities with either industry partners or partners within the university to hone in on research or problems that they were already tackling, and that these would be relevant to the lives of students or interests of students today. So in doing this, we worked with 2 ASU professors in the School for Information and Society around 2 research projects that they were doing, and then 1 industry partner working with philanthropic and NGO partners on societal challenges. So that was our approach. That's what we went in for. So next slide. So this is our results. We successfully did the thing. We held the event. It was held March 24th through the 24th through the 25th on campus at Hayden Library. And then we also had a virtual platform so that students could participate around the globe. We had 138 students who participated in our inaugural event. 71% of those were undergraduate, 29% were graduate and PhD students. We had 82% representing STEM majors, but 18% representing non-STEM majors. So we hit that multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary approach. I think we still have some ways that we can improve on that, but we did get about 1 in 5 from non-STEM majors participating in a very traditionally, kind of STEM hackathon experience. From the digital immersion highlights, we had 2 in 7 attendees participate online, and we had students from 9 countries participate. So it was really a global event, and we got some lessons learned on ways that we think we can expand on the global impact, as well as creating a better virtual experience in the future. As I noted, we had these 3 multidisciplinary tracks that were rooted in reality, either through research that was being done or community engagement, industry engagement. So we had climate impact on Brazilian favelas, specifically looking at landslide impacts on favelas, sustainable groundwater usage in Nepal, and then wildfire risk and social disparity, particularly at what's known as the wildland-urban interface, which is that interface between the forests and civilization. Next slide. So here's some photos. Everybody likes photos. We had great participation, a lot of really engaged students. We gave out some great swag, so you can see some of the t-shirts for our SpaceHACK for Sustainability swag. Also just in some of the hackathon impacts that we've had since the event. So, as I said, we had 138 students. We divided them up into teams. We had some really amazing submissions in just 21 hours of hacking. But we've seen additional impacts that have come from this since the event in March. Including one student who has written to us who has added geospatial sciences as a minor because of our event. We were integrated into an upper level humanities class with a professor who helped us with the Brazilian favelas track. This was actually a part of her course this year. We had 3 conference papers submitted from the research that was done in just 21 hours. And we have one student who is using the basis of their research that they did in the Nepal track on groundwater to develop their PhD thesis. So some pretty amazing results from a first event, and just really thrilled to see the impact that that's having, and just the enthusiasm of the students around the way that we kind of set this model up. So it was really, really great work. Next slide. So with that, what's next? We're continuing. So we're taking SpaceHACK to the next level. We kind of did the inaugural, the test bed, and found success. And we've been renewed with 3 goals for next year. So the first is to repeat the event and make it just not a one and done, but make it a series of events with introducing new tracks for next year and trying to double the participation. We also are looking to expand. As I alluded to, we had some global participation and collaboration, which was really great. And we want to, work on how we can expand that with international partnerships, including, establish international relationships that ASU already has with the Milo Institute. So we're looking for follow-on opportunities to really kind of take this broader. And in doing that, we're also going to establish a model for this. So as I said, we kind of took a new approach to hackathons, and now we're going to try to look at what those components are and how we can turn this into a toolkit or a resource for more people to take this model and embed it into their programs and systems at other universities or across the globe. Next slide. So final slide, thanks to the team, particularly Eric, who I kind of get to steal his thunder today in presenting, but obviously this was his genesis and his project from the work that he's done. And it was amazing getting to work with him and kind of pull this off. And then we just had some amazing students behind the scenes who helped us do the marketing, build the trainings, build a website for it, make sure that the virtual participation was there. And they were a pleasure to work with as well. So thanks to everybody, and obviously to II for supporting this. And if anybody's interested in understanding more what we're doing or getting involved with next year, reach out to me or Eric, because we'll be continuing on. So thanks so much.
Incredible. Thank you. And thank you, Eric. I think this project certainly exceeded all expectations going in. So the bar is now high as far as our expectations for the project. Now, a really just an amazing impact. And I just want to sort of re-emphasize how this is something that we're very interested in packaging and working with universities around the world to be able to host your own and to facilitate that. It's a very potentially powerful way to reach a broad group of students that aren't necessarily thinking about STEM careers. It's a great way to expose them to space through this lens of, just community-based needs. And so I think it can be a very powerful, transformative program really around the world. So, so that's going to be the focus this year. And thank you for everyone online that stuck around. We like to be timely and efficient. This time we just had so many good things to share. So we did go quite a bit over, but I'd like to thank you all. Maybe we can advance to the last slides here. Please stay connected, subscribe to our newsletter. Also, please share feedback. Other than, we went too long, we know that today, but please share feedback on how you enjoyed these webinars so we can plan for the future. Thank you all so much and have a great day. And thanks to all of our speakers. Bye for now.